Tonight on Business Life, real sector activities record mixed performance as labor demand falls. We will hear from a report by the Bank of Ghana. US-based lecturer and economist calls for legislation to cap borrowing by successive governments to avoid debt crisis.
The fact that we haven't been able to put a debt limit, a debt ceiling, or a debt cap on borrowing, so that we could show that if a government comes to power, at least we are giving you 10 billion to borrow. I think it will prevent future recklessness of finance minister.
Government set to press ahead with a decision to move all accounts to Bank of Ghana by the end of this year, as it highlights enormous benefits for the economy. We have details of these and many others lined up for you. Please stay. Grateful you could join us. I am Pius Kojo Baka. To our very first story, economist Dr. Sahad Idris has called for legislation to regulate and cap borrowing by successive governments to avoid a debt crisis. According to the US-based lecturer, past and present governments find it easier to raise money for development by borrowing from the international capital markets instead of developing the local economy. He's been speaking on the AM show.
We have a constitution that gives power to whoever is in office to do anything at all they like. And at that point in time, God forbid, if we have the case of Idi Amin, who can borrow up to $1 billion, they will definitely do that. And they will be within the legal limits of the law. They are not breaking any law, but they are putting the country in a debt crisis. But it's still legal. So when you are a growing nation, especially like an African nation, you don't make laws with so much loopholes that people in power could take advantage of. When people go on reckless borrowing to put the whole nation in a debt crisis, they are still within the legal framework. They are not breaking any law, but the nation is suffering. So that is one of the problems Ghana has been facing, I would say, since independence. The fact that we haven't been able to put a debt limit, a debt ceiling, or a debt cap on borrowing, so that we could show that if a government comes to power, at least we are giving you 10 billion to borrow. Or we are giving you, okay, whatever the total debt stock is currently, you have an advantage to borrow at least 40% of that, 50% of that. Whatever that we as a country decides to do, I think it will prevent future recklessness of finance ministers.
A while longer on the economy, and real sector activities recorded a mixed performance in the first quarter of this year. Well, that's according to the data released by the Bank of Ghana. However, labor demand in the economy fell in April this year compared to the same period last year. We've got more for you in this report.
According to the Bank of Ghana, consumer spending proxied by domestic VAT collections and retail sales posted a strong positive performance in March compared with the corresponding period last year. Retail sales also increased by 44.9% to 165.20 million cedis in March this year, up from the 114.05 million cedis recorded in the same period in 2022. Furthermore, activities in the manufacturing subsector, gauged by trends in the collection of direct taxes and private sector workers' contribution to the Social Security and National Insurance Trust (SNIT) pension scheme, improved in March 2023. However, activity in the construction subsector, proxied by the volume of cement sales, declined by 29.3%. Also, international trade at the two main harbors fell. On the labor market, the number of jobs advertised in selected print and online media, which partially gauges labor demand in the economy, decreased in April 2023 relative to what was observed in the corresponding period a year ago.
All right, so let's make sense out of this data released by the Bank of Ghana. And joining us via Zoom is the Professor Peter Quartey. He's the Director of Research at ISE. Pleasure you could join us on Business Life, sir. I'd want to know your initial thoughts on this worrying release by the Bank of Ghana. Demand for labor dropping. Your thoughts?
Very much, and greetings to your discerning viewers. I'm the director of ESA, not director of research. Yes, it is quite worrying, but not too surprising, because if you look at it even globally, in the first quarter and even beyond, global demand, global growth has been projected to decline. Locally, the same thing, but more importantly, when we go through or went through this painful debt exchange program, business prospects declined, profitability expectations, and many others went down. So obviously, it will translate into employment. But let's also be guided by the fact that a lot of our employment and economic activities are within the informal sector. They will not advertise for jobs. And therefore, when we are looking at employment or job prospects in the dailies, we ought to be cautious because it's not everything that is advertised. But having said that, if you compare that to the previous period and it tells you that there's a decline, then certainly within the formal sector jobs, there's an obvious decline in employment.
Even before we come to the underlying factors contributing to that, you mentioned that the debt exchange program may have played a role in that. What more could be accounting for the drop?
Well, the cost of doing business itself is also gone up. Utility prices and other tariffs. We saw the levies or the taxes that were imposed, and many other things. So basically, generally, cost of living or cost of doing business has gone up, and if your cost of production goes up, you are less competitive. You are therefore unable to employ more people compared to previous periods where cost of production, cost of doing business is lower. So I must say, proud to the coming on board of the IMF, prospects were not as high as we could see with the coming on board of the IMF. So perhaps if we were to do the same survey in a month or two, we might see better prospects, we might see better numbers, or some marginal improvements than we've seen in April this year.
Let's talk about the significance of this 7.1% drop year on year, which the Bank of Ghana has highlighted. How worrying is this to the economy, really, you would say?
Well, it's quite worrying in the sense that when employment goes down, certainly livelihood is going to be threatened. Social vices might go up. Even government revenue itself gets affected. When livelihood is threatened, it has social ramifications on several other facets of the economy. So, as a country, we ought to be concerned, and more concerned, especially for the youth, is that we are churning out a lot of young, energetic people whom we have to find jobs, we have to find means of engaging them. And if we don't, they become discouraged, and they are the future generation, and therefore we need to engage them meaningfully. So for me, for employment to go down is not the best, but I'm hopeful that with the coming on board of the IMF program and with some relative stability that we are seeing, hopefully output growth will pick up, business prospects will pick up, and also cost of doing business will improve, given the stability in the exchange rate, so that employment can be enhanced going forward.
As we all express optimism that employment will pick up, what are likely to be the ramifications if this trend should continue?
Well, if this trend should continue, it might not augur well for us. I've spoken about the case of the youth who, with churning out of out of school, they have to be engaged. It might bring stress on parents. It might bring stress on the citizenry. It might bring a lot of stress because if young people are not employed and they have to depend on the few or the working class, that is not the best. Also, it casts doubt on the future of the country as well as the ordinary person or the young person that do not find jobs. So I think we need to invest more. We need to promote the private sector. Government cannot employ most of these people. It is the private sector that has to flourish. So as we impose taxes, as we impose levies, as we impose all kinds of regulatory measures, let's also bear in mind that we are stifling the private sector. We need to strike a good balance between raising revenue and also promoting the private sector.
Finally, before you go, let me pick your thoughts on this latest prediction coming from Fitch, predicting basically that we are likely to see a second round of domestic debt restructuring. Do you think so?
Well, that may depend on the external sources. For the domestic source, I think we have hit the limit. I don't foresee another round. Another round might bring more hardship, might bring more pain, might also bring resistance, a lot of resistance from the public. I think what we went through is painful enough. So I don't foresee any further domestic debt exchange. But we are yet to see what the external creditors will bring on board, and hopefully that may or may not happen. But I don't foresee that happening. Given the commitments that we receive from the Paris Club and also from the IMF, I believe our external creditors would do the needful so that we don't have a second round of debt exchange.
We are indeed grateful, Professor Peter Quartey, for your time here on Business Live. He's an economist and also the director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research. He's speaking to us there. Let's move on to some other stories we have for you. Now, the government has indicated that it will press ahead with plans to migrate all accounts to the Bank of Ghana by the end of this year, despite the current pushback to the program. We've got more for you in this report.
Joy Business understands this pushback is coming from some ministries, departments and agencies that have reservations about this program and how it will rather affect your operations. But government insists the benefits to the economy are enormous as it stands to improve its finances in the coming months. This because government will be in a position to appreciate all the funds at its disposal, a development that might help reduce borrowings from the central bank and free up the space for the private sector. It also believes that it will help government to honor payments to clients of these commercial banks, a development that should be beneficial to these financial institutions. It is therefore dismissing reports that implementing this program will rather hurt the commercial banks in the country. Government in a document to the IMF has indicated that it is hoping to fully implement this program by the end of this year. It believes that it will bring a lot more transparency in management of government's account, as well as appreciate the true financial position of the country's treasury.
Now, the Ghana Hairdressers and Beauticians Association has joined calls on government to reconsider the cost of utility tariffs, which they argue the upward review in utility tariffs is the #1 difficulty facing their business. Utility tariffs witnessed an increase in the first quarter of this year, with electricity going up by 29.96% and that of water by 8.3%. Well, the association tells Joy Business that the government was supposed to engage them before going ahead with the upward adjustment. And we've been joined by the regional president of the Ghana Hairdressers and Beauticians Association, Bernice Asantewa Asante, for more. Pleasure you could join me, Bernice, here on Business Live. Now, I want you to tell me how bad the current utility tariffs is affecting your operation. Let's continue with the rest of our story. And the Energy Commission is using this year's Renewable Energy Challenge to support the activities of small-scale farmers, a move that will encourage them to use renewable resources in the operations. The competition, known as the Energy Commission Senior High Schools Renewable Challenge, is expecting participating schools to come up with innovative ideas to increase production to support the fight against food scarcity in the country. There is more in this report.
The High Schools Renewable Challenge was born out of the Commission's mandate under the Renewable Energy Act to promote the development and efficient use of the renewable energy resources through public education, training and regulation of entrepreneurs in the sector. The theme for this year's event, Mechanized Small-Scale Agriculture Using Renewable Energy Technologies, is aimed at supporting peasant farmers with modern technology to boost food production through innovation. Here is Executive Secretary of the Energy Commission, Engineer Oscar Monuneza.
Starting catching them young from the senior high schools for them to have this belief in themselves that they can also invent something that will be of relevance to our country and more so this part of the world. So we are blessed with so many resources. God has blessed with so many resources. So we are encouraging them to use the resources the natural resources that we have around us and use it to find practical solutions to our daily challenges. So you could see that last year the Winning School came out with a solar dehydrator. This year we're looking at using mechanized means by virtue of renewable energy to find ways of developing our agriculture industry. So we are believing that the kids having this challenge and with the support that we're giving to them, they'll be able to come up with some relevant solutions to our daily challenges in the agricultural sector.
Deputy Minister for Education in charge of TVET, Gifty Chumanpofu, said that the various inventions that will come up from the contest will be used to commercialize the agricultural sector.
So that we could know that our peasant farmers are not just growing for themselves and their nuclear families, but growing to get enough produce, preserve them, process them, store them properly, at least to serve a community, a district, a constituency, and then a region. And as you all do that, then Ghana could say that yes, we have food security, which is not relying on any food aid, but on our own efforts. In this era of planning for food and jobs, the theme for this year and the product they're going to give us will take us far.
In all, 10 high schools from the Greater Accra region are competing for a place at the national contest.
In some other news, the special advisor to the Minister of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, Oliver Boakye, has indicated that the lack of strong policy standards is accounting for the delay in transitioning to a circular economy. We've got more for you in this report as well. The SoundCalp West Africa Summit provides entrepreneurs and business owners with the opportunity to network with investors to drive sustainable development. The summit was held under the theme Unleashing the Power of Partnerships. Delivering the keynote address, Special Advisor to the Minister of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, Oliver Boakye, said addressing the challenges hindering the smooth transition to a circular economy is critical.
Other challenges that confront the transition to circular economy include lack of strong policy standards and regulations, the need for education, awareness creation and community engagement, and lack of technology and innovation. If you are able to overcome these challenges in Africa and succeed in achieving a just transition to circular economy, many jobs will be created along the value chains of all sectors in both developed and developing countries. Will be more so in developing countries and largely among those in the vulnerable segments of our societies. I have a very strong conviction that the entry of Intellecap into the West Africa region through the SoundCalp West Africa Summit marks the beginning of the kind of partnerships and initiatives that will ultimately help Ghana and Africa to achieve the just transition.
Partner and director at Intellecap Africa, Kanika Yadav, added that supporting and investing in businesses is critical to building a strong and resilient economy.
It's very critical for the individual governments to create an ecosystem or the regulatory framework which is conducive to the growth of the entrepreneurs and which is able to grow them rather than hold them back. So for instance, in the regulations, in the perspective, if you have the regulations for a business which is doing a $10 million of revenue versus a business which has a $10,000 of revenue, if the regulations, the permits, the licenses, everything which is same for the businesses at a different scale, then it is a hindrance for any new business to come into the market, because then they'll be just bothered by all these regulations that are there.
The government was also urged to provide a stable environment for businesses in the country to thrive. A reminder, you're still watching Business Live here on the Joy News channel with me, Pius Kojo Baka. There is more after this break. Hello, welcome back. Let's continue with the rest of our stories. And some investors say economic opportunities for Ghana's private sector are gradually back on track as Ghana navigates way out of global economic meltdown. Global Technological Director for Orkin Pest Control, Dr. Roy Harrison, has underscored the importance of pest control in Ghana's economy, indicating that it's an area the government can leverage to aid in improving the standard of living of the individual. He spoke to Joy Business as the company paid a visit to the American Chamber of Commerce.
Dr. Harrison at the engagement called for a stronger role for pest control in the production of food and related industries. He maintained that Orkin provides effective pest control management with a quick response time and a focus on safety.
Well, we think this is a perfect time to make sure that Orkin Pest Control is here in Ghana. We've seen now that the pandemic is past, we're seeing an increase in economic activities throughout the world as well as here in Ghana. There's a lot of growth going on. And we need to ensure that the environment here is comfortable, that structures are protected, when the people come that they don't worry about getting a disease. And we're just thrilled that we have partnered with such a great organization here in Ghana to provide the Orkin service. We originally are from the United States, that's where the home office is, but now that we have over 100 franchises throughout the world, and we're thrilled that we have a franchise here in Ghana. Orkin is a global company, and the headquarters are in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's where I came. And my responsibility is to globally ensure that the service of Orkin Pest Control is the same everywhere. And I'm thrilled to be here in Ghana. I've got my team here with me. They perform the service here. And Collins is the manager here. He does great service. He manages this team. But the service...
Meanwhile, External Relations and Project Manager at the American Chamber of Commerce, Ghana, Jane Ochiduache, pledged the Chamber's commitment to supporting its members.
So we at AmCham, we are very proud to be associated with Orkin Ghana because, the professionalism at which they, add to their service, it's so amazing. And Orkin is a member of AmCham, and we are so delighted to be part of them. It is also important to know that Orkin is the only member that is into pest control management. So I'm calling on members and non-members to engage with Orkin. Definitely you'll find cockroaches and mosquitoes somewhere in your homes or in your offices. And we want to have a healthy living. We want to have healthy living both in the office and at home.
The American Chamber of Commerce Ghana and Orkin Pest Control says they will deepen their relationship to promote trade.
Thanks so much for watching Business Life. I am Pius Kojo Baka. Let's do the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.